Bear with me, everybody.
Oh,
Good evening, good evening.
okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Vice Chair Mickey, can
Yes.
you hear me?
Your volume is low on our side.
Okay. Just want to make sure Mickey can take over the meeting after my chair report or so.
Ah, okay. We've turned up the sound a little bit, so hopefully we can hear you.
Test 1, 2, 3. Test
Yes.
1, 2, 3.
Yes,
Perfect.
perfect.
Thank you. And Mickey, if you're gonna be able to help by taking over the chairing role after the chair report. So that works for you.
Okay, the meeting for May 19th.
Hold on.
He's gonna chair until
Oh, he's going to chair. Right. Okay.
After the chair report?
or when you designate.
Yes. Are we ready?
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. This is the AVA Community Energy Community Advisory Committee meeting of May 19, 2025, 6 p.m. there in Oakland, California. I am at a remote location with my other colleagues. Adrian, will you take roll?
Yes, thank you. Member Landry.
Present.
Member Weiner.
Present.
Member Balkison.
Present.
Member Stevenson.
Present.
Member Swaminathan. Member Lakshman. Member DeFranco. Member DeFranco.
Present.
Thank you. Member Harper.
Present.
Member Lutz.
Present.
Vice Chair Souza.
Present.
Chair Hernandez.
Present. A point of order. Does Member DeFranco have to be sworn in?
Not for.
I don't. Let me check. Member DeFranco, is this your first meeting with attending as a voting member?
No, I've attended before in the place of one of the other members, but not in this calendar year. I don't know if that makes a difference.
Let me check, and perhaps we should just swear you in as just to make sure that you are sworn in. Okay.
Is
hold
it
on one second.
is it different from being an alternate to a member or the same thing?
If it's the first meeting, then she does need to be sworn in.
As a member?
Yes, she has to take the oath of office if this is the first meeting.
Thank
Hold
you.
on one second. Let me check.
So she's a member now?
No, she is serving as the alternate for Member Pacheco.
Oh.
Well, then she's fine then, if she's still the alternate, correct?
No, she still would need to be sworn in.
Oh, so she's the new alternate.
I'm not sure if she has. Let me just check 1 second. Let me.
Thank you. Apologies, Rachel, for the delay. Thank you very much for your service and efforts here.
Okay. Let's go ahead and swear you in. Just repeat after me. I, your name,
I, Rachel DeFranco,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance
that I'll bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member DeFranco, or alternate, hopefully member someday. All right, thank you, Adrian. With that, we'll go to public comment, item number 2.
There are no members with their hands raised at this time. There are no members of the public.
Thank you. With that, we'll look at the approval of minutes from April 14th. Have the members or alternates have a chance to look at that?
Yeah.
If so, happy to take a motion in a second.
Oh, second that.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
You said second.
For a motion to move.
Yes,
I'll move.
I'm a, and I'll second.
Okay. Member Lutz first, Vice Chair Souza second. Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, we'll move to that roll call vote for that.
Great, thank you. Member Landry?
Yes.
Hold on 1 second. Member Weiner?
Yes.
Member Balkison?
Yes.
Member Stevenson?
Yes.
Member DeFranco?
Yes.
Member Harper?
Yes.
Member Lutz?
Yes.
Vice Chair Souza?
Yes.
Chair Hernandez?
Yes.
Minutes approved.
Thank you very much. And now we'll go through the chair report. This evening, I have a conflict at about 7 o'clock, so I'll be stepping away, handing the gavel over to Vice Chair Souza. But before we do that, I would like to cover the chair report, and I emailed that over to Adrian. He should distribute it to the members. If not, it is on the portal, just highlighting some of the activities from the last meeting that we had there at the Ava Community Energy headquarters. So with that, CEO Chang highlighted a volunteer event at the Habitat for Humanity Sequoia Grove site in Hayward, celebrating Ava's sponsorship of an all-electric low-income housing project. Ava also launched its smart home charging program, a residential EV managed charge initiative targeting 10,000 vehicles with incentive for off-peak charging and almost already nearing 1,000 enrollments. CEO Chang also confirmed the successful phased rollout of 120,000 customers in Stockton and Lathrop with opt-outs under 5%. Now, I also informed that the board that the CAC voted 7-2 with one abstention to oppose supporting the SB 540 letter. Board members requested more detailed briefings or possible board-wide workshop on prepaid financing before approving future transactions. They talked about the savings, about $22 million through the end of 22-24, and exploring to do more options to 25. Informational items on Ava current trajectory towards a zero emission base portfolio by 23, and they analyzed the cost and risk of moving faster. Board did approve the multiple offtake agreements that the CAC supported, which included thermal resource adequacy, battery RA, EEI financial statement, and another financial settlement, and SB 540, some of you might have tracked, the request by staff to sign the letter of support failed to get approval. There was a first and second, but ultimately it failed 59102 to sign that letter of support. The informational item on the budget that will be discussed at the upcoming board meeting will be around the budget, and it's going to be very detailed. So it will be informational item, and that's going to come forward again to us next month. They'll discuss it there on Wednesday. We've already had the preliminary discussions at the executive committee, and they were talking through though the rates have increased and PCI has decreased since 2021. And there has been driven by historic increases in market energy prices. Ava has seen some stabilization, softening in energy costs, though overall costs remain elevated. Calendar year 2026 is forecasted a reduction in energy market prices and rates relative to 2025. The 25-26 budget process has required planning for greater uncertainty due to California regulatory activity, CEA. There is a CPUC rulemaking that could create a material adjustment to calendar year 2026, affecting items like the local development business plan and how much is invested in that. And in the attachment, I went ahead and showed more information because there's an upside and there's one with the PCI reform. The bottom line, the local development allocation is about $25 million, but with this reform, I might just fall to $10 million. So that's something we're gonna have to track closely and evaluate how we can help move that number up. But ideally, the reform is not, as material as that, but there are some adjustments that AVA staff, CEO Chang and others are doing to mitigate or evaluate that budget for 2026. But it will be discussed on Wednesday. You're welcome to listen into the conversation. Also, the executive committee had that discussion, and I think we can share a link with that. With that, I have nothing else.
Okay.
Clarifications, comments, Jim?
There's an item there that ERRA filing occurred on May 15 and has not been incorporated in the budget, but it's anticipated to improve it. Can you speak any to that? Or anybody here?
I don't think we have an update at this time,
Okay.
especially because that report is still pretty recent, so it's not really in the analysis yet.
Okay.
Do we expect that at the board meeting on Wednesday, the update? Kate, you're speaking to it.
I'm not sure. I'll
Yeah.
have to check and get back.
And it's Rusty Mills, CEO,
Rusty.
CFO for Ava. And I actually think that its staff is working through some modeling scenarios right now and hope to talk through some of the analysis from the ERA filing from last week. But it's not in the presentation. I think the idea is to maybe just discuss some preliminary results of the modeling, and should have more on that, at least to discuss Wednesday night. But then again, further when we come back to XCOM in early June, and of course, again at the board meeting in June for going through the budget final time.
Thank you, CFO Mills. And in the presentation, I think there's a small typo, May 15, 2025 in the presentation, just because it's mentioned in that presentation deck, not to confuse 2026. So make that adjustment if you can. We'll probably update it by then. Thank you for that clarification insight in regards to that process. Other clarifying questions from the chair report or other comments maybe for staff?
Go ahead.
Member Landry?
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask, I know the presentation on the budget is this Wednesday, and I'm going to try to attend also. But I'd like to ask, will the presentation be brought back to the to this Community Advisory Committee?
That would be the plan, to have this as an action item for recommendation from the CAC at the next month's meeting.
Okay, and with that recommendation, we will have a presentation.
Yes, that's what I anticipate based on our pre-call, having it with Kate, Alex, and Adrian. That's what we discuss. Highlighting this here in the chair report, because we have 3 other quote-unquote meaty items, they say, to cover and discuss. So I don't want to keep you in that room for 3 hours and other people in the Zoom room for 3 over hours. So that'd be difficult. But yes, it will be covered, brought back next month as part of the agenda and one of the first things to do,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
of course. Vice Chair.
Yeah, I just wanted to report that the SB 540 was passed by the California legislation unanimously. So although
Was
we
it
have,
passed or just out of committee?
oh, sorry, it was just out of committee. You're right.
The appropriation.
Thank you for that update. So you're saying it was passed out of committee and then it goes to the floor now for assembly, or the state, excuse me, state assembly? Is that state senate, excuse me?
I think
We'll
Sam
have
has an update.
Yeah, it will go into the
Sarah,
suspense.
do you want to use a mic?
SB 540 will go into the suspense process now, and we'll have the results on the suspense process at the end of this week, next week.
Okay.
Sam, could you explain to people why things go to suspense and what it means?
one of the great mysteries of the California legislative session is the suspense process, under which bills move into the suspense process within the appropriations process. These are all bills that have sort of our fiscal outlays for the state. And the suspense process is intended to provide a certain level of privacy and I would say internal negotiations for this various senators and assembly members in the appropriations committees to allow them to do work behind closed doors without to balance and work across various priorities for state spending. Bills that go through the appropriations process. This morning, there was a long suspense hearing. They then move in from the appropriations process into the suspense process. And then later this week or next week, we will hear the results of what bills come out of the suspense process and will continue towards the full Senate or Assembly.
If I can just add one more thing. If I understand it correctly, this is the way it used to be. Bills that would cost the state a certain amount of money go to suspense. And what suspense is supposed to do is say, okay, here's how much money we have to spend. Here's all the bills that would spend a lot more than that. So which ones are we going to let out and which ones not? So they're making policy choices, but based on money. And so, because what they don't want to do is put out bills that would break the budget entirely. I mean, they do go over the budget a bit, but they don't want to do it entirely because that would not be a good part of their supervisory role over legislation. But as Sam says, it's a mystery as to what gets out of suspense because there's all internal negotiations. And sometimes they'll say to a senator or assembly person, okay, you got 6 bills, they cost this much money, which one do you want? So you pick. And sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's other kinds of politics. Anyway, the 540 is now in that rather opaque process.
And I would add, it's not the only energy bill of relevance. You'll see when we get to our presentation, a good chunk of the agenda is in suspense. It just happens to be this week, the week of suspense is the week that we're meeting. I'll be able to report on our bills much further in the next meeting.
Sounds like a cigar-filled back room.
Great. Thank you very much for that update and the information, Member Weiner, in regards to what suspense is. So with that, I have nothing else to report through the chair report. Do we want to take public comment or anything else from that, Adrian, or are we good?
I'm happy to take public comment. Members of the public, please use the raise hand feature in order to be recognized.
Good.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Perfect. For the rest of the evening, there will be the action item for the board and one informational item, which includes the state legislative bill, request for approval for bill positions without recommendation. I think the critical municipal facilities is not a request for approval for bill position, but rather support the recommendation from staff who will do that project. Then we'll be looking forward to hearing more about the ad hoc committee update. There may be a presentation for that from Member Backelsoon, or I could be wrong. And thereafter, there'll be more information regarding anything else you may want to have on the agenda for future consideration. I may step away now. I'll probably join remotely from a different location. So if it's okay with our Vice Chair, would you mind taking over the meeting for me?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much. Thank
See
you,
you
Vice Chair.
later.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you very much.
We'll talk soon.
Okay.
We do have a
So,
we do have a hand raised for public comment for the prior item. I'm not sure if you want
who has their hand raised?
a member of the public.
Oh, okay. Would you please?
Reclaim Our Power. You're recognized for 3 minutes. Hold on 1 second. Okay, Reclaim Our Power. You're recognized for 3 minutes.
Good evening, Community Advisory Committee members and community. My name is Colin Cook-Miller, and I'm a resident of Oakland in Lejana Loney Territory and a customer of Ava Community Energy. I'm here representing the Reclaim Our Power Utility Justice Campaign. I'm here to speak about the legislative slate for Ava Community Energy. I have 2 questions for you all. First, I'm wondering what it means for AVA to monitor bills. And second, I'm curious as
Point
to
of
why.
order, if I may, Speaker, that's going to be our next item. So you're welcome to join and make comment at that point. I'm still on the call. My apologies, Vice Chair. But just a point of order, that would be the next item. So if you want to speak to the item, or if you want to talk to my chair report, that would be the time now to do it. Speaker, would you want to come back and speak at the item after the presentation?
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, Vice Chair, I just jumped in there. All right.
Our next item is the legislative report. So, are you giving that, Mr. Sam Sadie?
I'll bring it up.
Perfect. Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, members of the CAC. Very pleased to be able to join you today to walk through our May 2025 California legislative update. Next slide. We're going to cover three things briefly, and I'm going to try to keep this short because I know that you have a very packed agenda this evening. We'll talk about the legislative timeline, the governor's budget, and then we'll go through the May 2025 bill review along with our recommended positions. Next slide. So quickly, this is where we are. We have moved past all, we know for the most part what bills we're going to be seeing this year. A bill either has to have cleared its policy committees or it's either a fiscal bill or non-fiscal bills as of 2 weeks ago. We're here at this interesting moment at the suspense process in the appropriations. We will then move forward, and the next big piece that you'll see here is on June 6th, which is the last day for bills to be passed by their House of Introduction, either the Assembly or the Senate. And at that point, we'll have a really good sense of what's going to move forward and what isn't going to be moving forward this year. Next slide. Great, perfect. Briefly to touch on the governor's budget may revise. This came out earlier, last week. Time is quickly slipping away from me. This came out last week. This is a constitutionally mandated revision of the budget. The governor releases the first budget at the beginning of the year, then releases a revise looking at the information on how much money the state is getting in, as well as how much it is spending. This kicks off sort of the next big push around budgeting, which the state must adopt a budget by June 15th. Constitutionally mandated, it must do this. So this right now, as we jump into suspense and we jump into the budgeting process, there's a lot of internal negotiations going on between the governor's office and the state assembly and the state senate over what the budget will look like. We'll get more information over the coming weeks, and it will be adopted by likely on June 15th. I should note that we do expect there to be a fall baby budget, which will be a modification of the existing budget, pending, we have to see what comes out of federal actions, as well as LA County tax receipts, which are still coming in many cases have been delayed. Big headline to take away from this, there's a $12 billion deficit. This was not in the January. This has all evolved since January. This is primarily due to changes in federal distributions, but also very large increases in the costs, primarily of healthcare and other similar programs for the states. Some of the big takeaways for us are the governor included a clean, what he's now calling Cap and Invest. This was the Cap and Trade program. It has been renamed Cap and Invest through 2045. I think there had been expecting some policy changes, but they elected instead to just go with a clean extension thereof, exception of the renaming. Though I should note, there was a zeroing out of all GGRF, which is all GGRF allocations, except for $1 billion per year to high-speed rail. That is the only thing that is.
What's GGRF?
The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. This is the money that is brought into the state through the cap and trade system.
Okay.
It's about $4 billion a year. Traditionally, 25% of that has been reserved for high-speed rail as a way to access additional dollars. The shift here is it moves from a 25% allocation to a $1 billion. It's a dollar rather than a percentage now. The governor's budget also calls for 1.54 billion of the GGRF to go to CAL FIRE,
How big is the GGR?
about $4 billion. So
So that's raised from the cap and trade.
that is raised from cap and trade, correct.
And so there's no changes in the cap and trade, just the name change.
No changes except for the name change and the zeroing out of all the existing allocations with the exception of high-speed rail.
Are there things we would have liked to have not been zeroed out?
There are a number of programs and we're still getting into, the honest truth is we're still seeing final details on the budget and we'll report back once we have more information in time.
Is this related to, on our bills every April and October, we get a greenhouse gas,
The climate credit.
the climate credits?
It is not related to
Okay.
the climate credit. We will touch on the climate credit though, so don't, keep that point with you. The only other, the other two major pieces of pie that we could see here is there's now a new $3.7 million for the PUC oversight of utility scale batteries. That has not traditionally been a PUC space of operations. And secondly, there's 1.9 million for the CEC for a manufacturing and energy permitting program, the idea of building the industrial base here in California. I should note, however, all of this is up for negotiations. So while it may look very set in stone, it is most definitely not. And there will be a lot of changes that will happen in the next month before the adoption deadline on June 15th. Hearing no questions, I'm going to go to my,
Can I?
yes,
I have a question about, so how big is the GGRF?
it's about $4 billion a year. About that, yeah. It changes based on the value of the market value of the trade piece of cap and trade. Yes.
You said there were some changes that we don't like in terms of zeroing out from the GGRF?
Yes. Yeah, there are a few smaller ones and I can provide you a list of those.
Okay. And what, in terms of the GGRF that's going to CAL FIRE, will that in some way reduce the amount of money that the utilities need for fire prevention? Is it intended to substitute for that and to basically be a rebate to ratepayers? I read somewhere that that could result in a $10 per month rebate to, or maybe it's $10 a year to ratepayers because of that.
I won't speak directly as I don't have full knowledge. I do, in reading the budget documentation, it is not envisioned as a ratepayer mechanism at all. I know that that would run into some real jurisdictional boundaries, but it is the first time that we are seeing this large amount of money go to CAL FIRE out of the GGRF funds.
Would it be possible for you to look into that further?
I'm happy to do so, yeah. I should note, however, that that is only the governor's request. That has not been adopted.
I understand that, but I also know that there are some members of the legislature who are concerned about the increase in utility bills due to the CAL FIRE, to the fire prevention issues.
Yeah.
And that this has been an issue. So this looks like a response to that, and it would be nice to find out whether there is some intent to do that.
Sure. I'll follow up on for you.
Obviously, it's possible it's only meant to rebuild the Pacific Palisades for rich people, but, let's find out.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
What happens to the bills that don't quite make the budget? Do they just kind of stay in suspense or they drift away?
They stay in suspense and they die.
Well, so the budgeting process is different than the legislative process. The budgeting process sets the top line perspectives on how much we have to spend writ large and on the various buckets. The governor, of course, includes certain requirements in the budget to essentially create programs, but the legislature has its own process. And then when we talk about suspense and we talk about process through committees, that's on the legislative side. So those two shall meet on June 15th when something is adopted, and that will be a result of negotiations between the legislature and the governor's office.
Thank you.
Of course. Perfect. Next slide. So, well, before we jump into specific pieces of legislation, I wanted to walk through big picture how we got from 2,350 bills that were introduced in February to where we are today. We started by taking a look at all of these bills and came to about 100 that sort of what we would say touch on our space. They touch on the things as envisioned, the pieces of what we do as envisioned by the Joint Powers Agreement. And so we wanted to go back and say, okay, things like local power development, job creation, community energy programs, electrical rate prices. So that's how we got from the big 2350 to about 100 that we're keeping an eye on as watching them as they move through the process. Next slide. So then we take these 100 bills and we ran them through the filter of what are the things that are part of our legislative program? What are we really working on? And you can see the 5 pillars of our legislative program there. And so we went from these 100 bills, which touch somewhat, to 35 bills that we then worked internally to analyze. So we worked with our Power Resources team, we worked with our local programs team, we worked with our CalCCA, and we worked with members of our board to look at what are the impacts of these 35 specific bills. You can go to the next slide. So we presented, of those, we're at 35, and now we are down to a smaller number of bills. We're now down to 14 that we're actually recommending that the board take a position on, and 14 others that deserve what I would call enhanced monitoring or heightened monitoring, making sure that we're really paying attention to what's going on and having our team in Sacramento really keep an eye on every single one of the movements of those bills. I should note that a number of bills have, since I last spoke with you all, a number of the bills have fallen off our radar. 5 bills missed their deadlines and are not moving forward this year. In one case, a sponsor left the assembly, so that bill is no longer moving. And in one case, CCAs were explicitly amended out of jurisdiction of a particular bill, so we're not following that one too closely either, as it won't impact us. There are, of course, other bills that could come forward with future consideration, so we will keep an eye on that. But I think it's really important here to talk about how we got from 35 to the 14 recommended positions. We got there by putting together a vision for what bills we should take an actual position on. One, bills that directly impact our operations or legislative program. If it impacts how we do our jobs every day, and it could be for better or worse, we absolutely should take a position on those bills. Second category are bills that meet the JPA's vision of an affordable, sustainable, and local energy system and have broad-based support amongst the community. So we want to make sure that it may not touch on us directly, but if it has broad-based support, then we feel comfortable actually recommending a position. And then there are bills where we have our perspective as AVA has specific resonance with key decision makers. It could be a bill where it impacts our community. It could be a bill where the author is a member of our delegation. So places where we think that AVA specifically could drive an impact and change the language. So these are sort of the 3 categories of bills we will be recommending that we take positions on. I should note, not all bills fall under this. There are lots of bills that touch generally on the JPA's vision, but are very controversial and would be challenging for us to take a position on. There are bills that don't touch on our work that we may want to take a position on, but it's not our place to do so. So this is as much to tell us what we should position on as to tell us what we should not position on. Next slide. Okay. Yes. Questions before I jump in.
How much impact do AVA recommendations or support or oppose have up in Sacramento?
The answer is it varies. There are bills where we have direct impact due to our nature of providing service in this particular community. Mm-hmm. There are bills that we have direct impact due to them being authored by a member of our delegation. But much of our impact is due to our partnership with our broader industry. Cal CCA has a large and strong legislative program that we play a piece of that legislative program. And so I'd say a lot of it is how we position ourselves on bills and then the guidance that we give. I should note, there are bills where we actually work directly with authors and change legislation, change language to make it better for us and other CCAs.
I may be asking the same question, but so of these three categories, is a fourth one perhaps what the other CCAs are thinking? I mean, is there a conversation with the other CCAs in California?
Absolutely. We meet weekly with representatives of all the CCAs to focus just on legislative work. And then there are what are called legislative tiger teams within that, where we do analysis of various bills and really get into what should start. So an issue starts with a tiger team, be it, I was this morning on the zero emissions vehicle tiger team where we talked about a specific bill. We'll come up with a recommendation that will then go to the legislative committee that meets every Friday. And then the legislative committee, which is assembles a group of folks like myself from all the CCAs, we then take our recommendations to the board of Cal CCA, which can then adopt or reject those recommendations. And then all the members of Cal CCA support the lobbying effort around those positions.
So these recommendations are all of the California CCAs, not just AVA?
No, these recommendations are just for AVA.
Oh, okay.
So for instance, I'll give you an example. There are a number of bills around sort of bioenergy and energy that comes from the burning of various materials. That's not something that AVA does. There are other CCAs that wish to do more in that space, and the board has adopted positions in support of that. But they don't generally impact us. So we as AVA are electing not to take positions on those biomass bills.
Well, would it be hard to add what the other CCAs agree on our 14 bills? I mean, isn't there more power if the CCAs together support a bill than specifically AVA?
Absolutely. And in our internal analysis, we do, I can tell you, I'm happy to share with you where Cal CCA
Just as we
is.
go through these.
Sure,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah, happy to help, happy to provide. I should note, Cal CCA has not taken a position on all of them, nor for that matter, will we take a position on all the ones that Cal CCA takes a position on.
Makes sense.
Perfect, great. I'll keep going. I'm going to try to go a little faster. I know I don't want to take up too much time here. We're going to go through these by category based on the sort of the piece of our legislative platform, our legislative program here. And the first one is about how do we make electricity more affordable for the end user? There are three bills here that you see. One is we're recommending support positions for two of the bills. That's AB 729 and SB 254. AB 729, to speak about the climate credit, as you were mentioning earlier, this would shift the climate credit from a single payment in April into multiple payments, best set up to align with bills are the highest. So the idea being is when the bills are the highest, that's when you get the climate credit. For electricity, it'd be August and September. That's when bills are highest. For natural gas, it's in February. Of course, we don't provide gas. But we're recommending support here. We're also, in speaking with our internal team, we feel that this could go a ways to hopefully address some of the arrearages that occur during those high bill months.
I notice on your chart you have a percent.
Yes.
What is that percent?
That's me trying to give you all the sense of how far these bills are moving through the legislative process. So you can say one's further than the other, meaning that it has been voted to a certain point through the process.
So it's just how far along?
Exactly. I want to give you some sense of what's moving very quickly and what potentially is moving a little slower.
Okay.
SB 254 is another one we're recommending a support action from the board. 254 is a Senate affordability package. It's a very large package. I should note, you saw 254 a month ago. This is a completely different bill. That bill was gotten amended into this bill. This is now a bill being moved by the Senate leadership in the Pro Tem's office as part of the Pro Tem and Governor's three-prong affordability strategy around housing, energy, and licensing. And this is the energy piece of that. The vast majority of this applies to IOUs and IOU cost recovery. However, it does incorporate some things from our perspective, particularly around the climate credit. The climate credit would be rolled into this. There are a couple other bills that we'll talk about later that are also rolled into this large legislative package. And we're recommending a support action here as the things that it does that impact us, we're fans of along these lines. Great. Next slide. We'll talk about here, so this is our accelerating decarbonization plank. There are three pieces here. You'll notice there's only one under battery storage because two of the battery storage bills that were also moving forward have since stopped moving forward and did not make deadlines. We are recommending a support if amended for SB 283. This is a bill that would apply new fire safety standards to utility scale batteries. We have a few amendments that we are pushing forward, primarily around ensuring the author's legislative intent. These aren't the amendments here aren't amendments that we're worried about, but we want to make sure that they get made before we move into a full support recommendation. Great. Now, on the local permitting side, you'll see we're recommending two bills to support here, AB 39 and SB 282. I'll start with 282 because it's much simpler. 282 requires municipalities to streamline heat pump systems. We don't have a heat pump program, but I know if JP and the team were ever decide to come through with a heat pump program, this would make it easier to implement across our service territory. And AB 39 requires our larger municipalities and counties to adopt electrification, decarbonization, community energy plans and integrate them into their general plans. As a rule, nearly all of our municipalities already have plans that would meet that. The only two that currently do not are Stockton and San Joaquin County, and I've spoken with the folks in Stockton. They are working on a plan that would do that in Stockton and San Joaquin County. It's unclear still exactly how this would be implemented. There's some implementation questions, but as a whole, we're supportive of this. We'd like to see this move forward. Lastly, we have a couple other decarbonization bills that don't fit into our buckets here. We're recommending support votes for both AB 915 and SB 698. AB 915 is a bill that is from Petri Norris, the Assembly member, the chair of the Assembly Utilities and Energy Committee. This originally had included a $900 million appropriation for the Clean Energy Reliability Investment Plan. Unfortunately, that has been taken out of the bill. However, this creates the foundation for that when those monies are made available, will allow for this process to move faster. And it also creates a pool of project siting and permitting experts within CEC, which we think will hopefully increase quicken the speed at which projects get cited and approved and built out. Yes.
With respect, putting the CEC and CPUC in charge of reporting on significant delays is putting the fox in charge of the chicken coop. These are the guys who cause delays. We need if not a blue ribbon commission, something like it. And I would suggest that obviously it may be too late, but this bill should be amended to create some outside inquiry into these issues. This is not a way to do it.
I would like to build on that and ask, when you're talking about barriers and delays, are you talking about environmental, regulations? I mean, is that what we're talking about? What are the barriers and delays being caused by? It's not things like environmental reviews and things like that, is it?
I can't speak to that. I think the idea of this bill, and I'm not in Assemblymember Chair Petri Norris's office, but I think her vision for this is that this would report on where those delays are coming from and then might lead to a secondary process of how best to address that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Member Weiner's comment, and I also think it'd be good to know what barriers and delays they're going to report on. I mean, specifically. Because there seems to be something afoot to, not support doing environmental impact statements and that kind of thing. So I'd just like to know if that's the case, or,
We can follow up.
thank you.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, if, AB 915, does that have anything to do with the federal funding of these projects?
No, it does not.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hearing no question. I'll move on to SB 698, which we're also recommending a support movement here. The CEC already, the C authorized to establish distributed energy resources list. The CEC already keeps these lists. These are lists of technology and how they can be deployed and connected into the KAISA, to the grid and the systems. We double checked with the author here and his offices. He said they're particularly just interested in making sure that CEC knows that it has the authority under legislation, under statute, rather than under regulations. So the impact will be minimal except to solidify their existing operations of CEC. Next slide. Our next point that I'll quickly talk about is how we promote local development and all the great work that JP and the team do. I think the one that we're interested in supporting here is SB 314, which is from Senator Padilla, which would allow chargers to be so when a charger enters operation and when a public charging system enters operation, it has to be inspected by the state, though the delays for that process can be significant. And this would allow installers to self-certify for the interim process. And then the charging stations would still then need to be certified by the state, but it would allow them to get up and running in the interim until that inspection can be completed. So we're in favor of that, obviously, as it will help us to expand the AVA Charge program further and faster across our service territory. Moving on to promoting local development, this was more on the data center side. I know we've had lots of questions around data centers and how they will be entered into our service territory. The one bill that we are recommending support if amended is on AB 222, which is from Bauer Kahana of our delegation here. This is a bill that would require upfront analysis of energy utilization before a covered AI model or system can actually be placed into service. And this allows the commission to adopt regulations around energy standards more generally for data centers. We are supportive of the idea that we need to have more information, particularly for our teams. We often don't know until pretty late in the process about what this demand will look like from these types of large centers. So we're definitely supportive of getting this information early. I think we are in a support if amended position because we want to get it earlier if possible. This bill currently calls that before the data center is connected, before an AI model is deployed to a data center, we would like to get the information if possible when the data center is in consideration for construction. That would allow us to get even more information as needed to service these data centers moving forward. So we're in support of more information, but we'd like to see it amended to make our lives easier and make the interconnection process easier. Great. Next slide. You'll see here at the top, I have left a nice big blank space for protecting community choice because there are no bills this session which would attack community choice in California. This is great credit to everybody who has sat in this chair before me and others. So we're very, very pleased to see that. Our next focus is on bill transparency and understanding. This is really as we think about dynamic rates. Right? We know dynamic rates are a part of AVA's portfolio. They're parts of many different CCA's portfolios, though not all, I should note. And there are two bills here that we're focused on. AB 44, we're recommending a support position. This makes it easier for us to do our jobs here. This would publicize more information. This gets more information out, particularly around the load modification protocols that allow us to adjust our format, our electrical demand forecasts. So again, more information makes it easier for us to do our job internally. The second bill here, SB 541, 541, if you saw this when we brought it forth, if you read the bill when we brought it forth a month ago, we were likely in a oppose unless amended posture. The bill has been completely rewritten in the intervening month, which is and really moved in a very positive direction. It begins to put into operations some of the load shifting targets and that we would be dealing with as we work with others. We do believe that there are still a few amendments that we would like to see implemented, and we are working closely with the author's office to bring those to fruition. I think some of our questions, we want to make sure that CCAs aren't directly impacted, and we're helping to provide information around data collection and analysis from IOUs to the state of California, and then eventually to us as well. So we're in a support if amended posture here. Again, like to see more done, but as a whole, we like the bill and we like where it's going. Great. Next, you have a list of 6 bills that are really focused on IOUs. These do not impact us. They impact IOUs around everything from load shift goals to the use of ratepayer funds, all the way to IOU performance metrics and financial incentives. We as a whole, as a staff team, we're recommending that we take a monitor position on each of them, given that they don't have direct impact on CCAs and our operations on a daily basis. Yes.
I'd like to push back on those, I think. I read through them and had a bunch of questions.
Could you speak louder, please?
Yeah.
Or into the mic?
So I think this is the one, 740, 1167, 24. Okay. 740 seems like it's one that should be amended so that it supports AVA being able to design and manage and benefit from large-scale deployment of virtual power plants. I don't know the language, so it may not be appropriate, but open it up so that JP can run a virtual power plant for our benefit. 1167, 24, SB 332, SB 500, and AB 13, I haven't read in all the details, just sort of skimmed it, occasionally jumped to the legislative analyst's summary of it. But I would change to strongly support those if, depending on the messy details inside. In the Affordability Ad Hoc Committee, we've been discussing how PG&E's rate increases and how opaque they are, and the processes behind them have been, the rate increases have been negatively impacting AVA's constituents, and also the rate increases reflect badly on AVA because most people don't take the time to distinguish between AVA and PG&E.
Jim, I don't interpret the political influence to mean that. Because they say funds activities like political influence. That's how you interpret those words?
Well, it's PG&E funds political influence.
Right.
And this is, maybe I wrote it wrong, but I'm thinking even though it's not these bills are not directly addressing CCAs.
Right.
They're addressing how PG&E operates, or IOUs in general, but in our case, PG&E. And how PG&E operates affects our constituents and our rates. And people looking at the rates, they're not gonna tell what's Ava and what's PG&E. So I think Ava should be protecting our constituents from unknown
Right.
massive rate increases for opaque and obscure reasons, and at least digging into them and supporting legislation that opens it up and opens up the understanding of what's there, limits what can be done for rate increases, those sorts of things.
I did want to quickly note, we actually, our regulatory team has done an analysis of PG&E rate increases over the past few years and the various causes therein. We had initially planned to present that to you this month, although the agenda was packed. But we will find a time to bring the regulatory team in to walk through with you. They really broke it down. And I've seen the presentation, and it's quite good, and we'll make that happen. Big picture, I think I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate the guidance. Our legislative team is myself and 1.5 other people. There is only so much that we can do as a team of 2.5 people, and so we have to triage somewhere, and that's where we went through that process you saw at the beginning of the presentation about how we select which bills we're going to take an active role in. When it says monitor here, that doesn't mean that we're not paying attention to it. We are keeping an eye on, particularly these bills, these shortlisted monitor bills. We're keeping a very close eye on all of them. And so we're monitoring them to make sure that if they're amended, that any amendments are not negative to Ava's operations. And if that something were to change, we will bring bills back to you with a requested support or opposition. But I think, at core, I hear what you're saying, but we did have to triage somewhere, and this is sort of how we've ended up with our recommended support and opposition perspectives.
Jim, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, but I do think that what you're saying should be added to number 3 of one of the criteria that you evaluate for bills, that it is protecting Ava's reputation, basically, in terms of like costs and affordability. And I think that's actually something our group would recommend, and I think you should add that. It addresses what you're saying. I'm not exactly, I think you're saying that we should, for the bills that you're mentioning, I guess I didn't really understand, because when I
Right.
think of political influence, I'm thinking we don't want PG&E to go in there and, control the process. Is that-
Right.
Right, so you're
That's
saying
what these bills
are allowed,
generally attempt to do.
this is to prevent it though, right?
The
Is-
bills
right.
are to prevent it.
Right.
Or if I said oppose, that was a.
Okay, that's why I'm
I
not
said
understand.
Support these bills, change it
Right,
from
support it, you mean-
monitor to support.
I agree.
The bills.
Okay. Okay, got
Just
it.
because
Yeah.
it helps our Ava constituents,
Right.
with their bills, and keeps the electricity prices down, even on the Ava side.
Right.
Actually, I really, really agree with Jim.
Me too.
And the reason is I think we can address that probably if we can get to the presentation that we had in energy affordability. And maybe you can chime in at that point with, if you had any residual memory of what these bills are, and if maybe thinking a little bit about how they would help to mitigate what we're seeing as the community.
Because we have action items at the end, and this would be a great action item to end with our talk that we have.
So,
yeah.
yeah,
Great. I'll move on then to board operations, next slide. there are two bills that we are pushing, that we're asking the board to support around board operations. One would extend the Brown Act, which would allow groups like our subcommittees to meet remotely, as well as one that would allow the first one, 259, would allow extend Brown Act alternative teleconferencing rules indefinitely, and the second one would be specific to board subsidiaries, so our subcommittees. Lastly, on the last slide, these are our other priority bills that didn't fit into a category per se. We're recommending monitor on most of them as they're all interesting. I would say the two that I would draw your attention to are support is SB 453. This would extend the SCHIP program, which is scheduled to end at the end of 2025. We are also undertaking additional work around ensuring that CCA customers are eligible for SCHIP funds. That is happening, however, on the regulatory side, not on the legislative side. This will be an important piece for our the VPP program that we're setting up. We think this will encourage more people to participate in that important program. And then finally, 842. Which initially had been an oppose or an oppose unless amended position. We've moved to a monitor position as a lot of the obligations that would have been placed on us have been stripped out of the bill, and it is now more of a bill to look at these various pieces rather than being a bill that would mandate CCAs take action. Okay, that's it for me. I'm always available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Sam. That was excellent, very informing, and it taught me personally a lot. Thank you. So I'd like to open this up for any public comments or questions.
I included AB 13 and the ones that I thought we should support because it tended to, my reading of it is it would generally protect, increase transparency on rate setting decisions, so just generally increase. So,
Great.
another one that,
That's the one that's on the other priority bills though.
Yes, AB 13 would change the representation and the makeup of the CPUC commissioners.
right, and it does have some increased transparency
Yes.
language in there too, which would be good to see.
Are there any other questions? I do have I'd like just a wish. SB 332 that requires the CEC to evaluate the transition of the IOU model to a successor entity. Implements disconnection transparency reporting. And it's from Representative Wahab. She's
Senator
actually from our
Wahab.
district.
Yeah.
Senator, thank you.
Senator
Senator Wahab, who's from our districts, right?
She is, yes. You can see,
He
as
represents you, I think.
as you look at the slide deck, you can see all the bills on the left-hand side there that are highlighted in orange. Those are bills that are being authored by members of our delegation.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So we've had requests for supporting 4 of the ones that are being monitored. AB 13, AB 740, AB 1167, and SB 24. Was there any other you mentioned, Jim?
That matches with what I've got down.
Okay, cool. Attempting to be helpful, maybe not.
No, very helpful, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to move to public comment as there is nothing else in the room.
Yes. Reclaim Our Power. You're recognized for 3 minutes. Hold on just 1 second. Reclaim Our Power. Recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, and good evening, Community Advisory Committee members and community. So my name is Colin Cook-Miller. I'm a resident of Oakland and an AVA customer. I'm here representing Reclaim Our Power Utility Justice Campaign, a statewide coalition with over 100 organizational members. And we strongly urge the CAC to call on the AVA board to support SB 332 to enable affordable, sustainable, local, safe, and reliable clean energy for AVA customers and people across California. The bill proposes specific near-term fixes to improve the safety and affordability of our energy system, requiring annual audits and replacement of equipment that's outlived its usable life in high fire risk areas, requires the safest and most cost-effective options for replacement equipment, and requires proposed executive compensation be contingent on safety metrics. But most importantly, at the heart of SB 332 is a feasibility study to explore transitioning the for-profit IOUs, including PG&E, to a not-for-profit utility, either a cooperative, public, or nonprofit utility, in order to take the profit out of the energy system. Why is this important, and how could this benefit AVA? Well, a 2023 analysis from the CPUC's Public Advocate's Office found that Californians could save $28 billion if the state, rather than the IOUs, built our transmission infrastructure. The savings over the coming decades, if this were done, could be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. As AVA customers, we are significantly impacted by PG&E's rising rates. As you know, PG&E has the highest rates in the continental US. PG&E electric bills have jumped more than 56% in the past 3 years, including 6 rate hikes in 2024 alone. Today, over 20% of all IOU ratepayers, over 7 million Californians, are behind on their bills. And right now, PG&E is requesting yet another rate increase to boost shareholders' rates of return. So on top of the proposed increases to the PCIA charge, this latest PG&E rate increase should have AVA board members take seriously the opportunity through SB 332 of exploring the feasibility of replacing PG&E with a not-for-profit utility. It could reduce PG&E rates, reduce our rates and bills as AVA customers, and finally end the PCIA charge. Sky-high rates are not inevitable. California's publicly owned and cooperative utilities, from SMUD to our neighbor in Alameda, charge 50% less on average than the IOUs because they're not-for-profit. So SB 332 would invest a relatively small amount of money upfront in exploring not-for-profit utility models to take the profit motive out of delivering electricity in order to achieve significant cost savings and bill savings for customers in the long run.
Thank you.
Just concluding my comment, please ask
Thank you.
AVA board members to support SB 332 to build a sustainable energy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no further hands raised at this time.
Thank you. And we shall now transition into our next.
We have to vote
It's
on
an action item.
Oh, it's an action item. Okay. All right. So I'd like to call for any motions.
Or discussion. So we move to discussion of the item and a vote if necessary.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
I would like to call to support the recommendation, except for the ones I called out, which I don't type on my monitor is too small, so.
Did you want to specifically mention those? I think.
Yeah,
written
I
down some-
wanted to,
3-2.
well, there was one,
We're looking for the ones that we would like to also move from support, monitor to support.
right.
It's
Sam has
important that
access.
we use the mic so that people
Right.
online can hear us.
Okay.
So, so I have, AB 740, AB 1667,
You have 8740?
740 is, yeah,
Was it? Okay.
it's a different topic, but I think we should support it.
Right, yeah, no, I wrote that down, I think. I wrote it down wrong.
and AB 1667.
1167.
1167.
1167,
My apologies.
SB
24,
24,
AB 729. And AB 254?
Sorry,
I didn't-
29?
And AB
254.
254.
The ones let me,
Yeah, let's do,
I tagged, change from monitor to support.
There was the last comment too.
that was
I'm
SB
sorry,
332.
Adrian, would you pull up the slide deck on
That's what he
slide
mentioned.
12?
And do you want to? add-
I wanted
I'd like to support that, yeah.
I wanted to, I would like to see Ava support AB 1167, SP 24, SP 332, SP 500, and AB 13.
Can you repeat that again, please?
Okay. AB 1162, SB 24, SB 332, SB 500, and AB 13.
And I'm sorry, did you mean AB 1167, not 1162?
1167.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to confirm. I know, it's a lot of numbers.
And I think you were-
I'm
So
having
there's-
trouble.
there's
want to
8 that we
support
mentioned.
You were
those
already
bills.
mentioning that you're
Five.
moving towards supporting 740 as well, right?
Yeah, I have 8.
Oh.
Sam?
Yes, AB 740, but that's separate from the clarity and
I think
cost.
they were already moving in that direction, so they're really monitoring that.
AB 740 is already a support recommended
Oh, it's
position.
already.
Oh,
I think, no, I'm sorry, not 740. I was thinking 729, which you mentioned, Member Balkison. 729 is.
729, yeah. That's-
So I have 6 recommendations from you, just so I make sure I'm taking this down. AB 1167, SB 24, SB 332, SB 500, AB 740, and then
also
AB 729,
AB 13,
AB 1, AB 13.
AB 13.
AB 13.
AB 729, we're already recommending a support position.
And 254 already, too.
254, we're also recommending a support position.
And what was 721? I'm sorry, I heard that go by.
So for clarity, I'll repeat what I'm hearing. I just want to make sure I'm getting this
Yeah.
down correctly. AB 1167, AB 13, AB 740, SB 24, SB 332, and SB 500.
Yeah, that sounds
Yes,
right,
that's-
and I apologize, but we wanted to get those clear.
Absolutely. No,
thank you.
and yeah.
Oh, that's great.
This would take us from a current 14 bills supported to 20 bills supported.
Is
If
that-
we can help, we'll help
That's
you.
too
I
much.
I want to make sure that I'm clear on where that would be. I did want to correct one piece from the commenter. As far as SB 332 does not include changes to the PCIA expressly. It does look at changing the IOU model writ large, which could impact the PCIA, but it doesn't actually touch directly on PCIA.
That's
Sorry, I just want to make sure.
that's good. We actually
Clarification.
discussed this, actually.
Okay, so I move that we support staff recommendations with the changes as noted.
I second that. If you care.
And let's call for a vote for support of,
To do discussion or public comment?
We should have, if there's any alternative motions or we can just go ahead and move to a vote, perhaps if we want to have more discussion before we actually have the vote.
I do have, is Ava in a position to oppose a bill or?
Yes, absolutely. We just don't have any bills here that we've
AB 942, I think makes sense for me to oppose the bill rather than monitor.
okay,
Yes, yes.
the NEM bill.
okay, we would like to add that to our,
And I'm sorry, I just want to confirm, you've seen the most recent version of the bill. So
not-
it's a much much smaller in scope than it once was. It's now no longer would move, initially it had been a 10-year phase out for the NEM 1 and NEM 2. That has been removed from the bill, and it is now only a phase out upon sale of a property.
Understand.
Okay, I just want to make sure you understand that the bill is in fact very different than it was a month ago.
Do we still want to add that to our,
I still want to oppose.
that is still,
Can you repeat your alternative motion?
I think we should oppose the NEM 942. AB 942.
Why is that?
A friendly amendment?
Is this a friend? Yes.
I'll take it as a friendly amendment,
Okay. Okay.
so we don't have to vote on it.
Sorry, I'm just making, make sure I've got, so.
Yeah.
And Member Balkison, do you accept the?
I accept.
Okay.
at this point, without further
Was there further conversation?
comment online
And so that
from?
oppose AB 942 is added to Member Lutz's motion.
Okay.
It's a total of 7 additional positions. Just want to confirm. Okay, perfect.
Yes. Okay.
We're gonna make you work harder.
So
Any
we'd like,
further
Oh, it's
discussion? on this
50%.
matter?
with any further discussion from AVA community members, online or in the room? Okay, I'd like to proceed. Do we have the second already?
Yes, we do. Ready to vote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Voting on Member Lutz's motion, Member Landry,
Yes.
Member Weiner,
Yes.
Member Balkison,
Yes.
Member Stevenson,
Yes.
Member Lakshman,
Yes.
Member DeFranco,
Yes.
Member Harper,
Yes.
Member Lutz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Souza.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Okay.
You asked for more.
Like to move on to our next item on the agenda with JB and his critical, what was the name of it?
Critical municipal facilities.
Thank you. Critical municipal facilities. JP, thank you.
Thanks very much. And just time check, how long do we have for this item? Because I think we have one other item after.
Can you
Maybe
have an hour?
perhaps 8 o'clock or maybe go to 8:30 for.
Wrapping by 8.
Can we wrap up by 8, which would be probably at least 15 minutes for discussion?
Sure. So wrap up the whole item by 8, not the meeting. Just
Just
so we have 40 minutes.
We have another item.
40
after
minutes
that.
for the item. Yeah, just confirming we didn't want to wrap the meeting up, in which case it would make it more rapid.
Right.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Next slide, please, Adrian. So bringing back to you all for consideration and discussion, our proposed action item to the board this month is for an authorization to continue to deliver the critical municipal facilities solar and storage program with the participating cities. There are 4 cities left that are participating, the cities of Berkeley, Fremont, Hayward, and Livermore. We have issued a solicitation to bring on board a contractor and are making a recommendation to the board that would authorize AVA to negotiate and execute an EPC contract, which is engineering, procurement, and construction, for the services to deliver these solar and storage projects with McMillan Electric. Talk about them a little bit later. We have proposed out to the cities a reduced savings proposal based on a lot of downside risks that AVA will be taking on board, which I'll describe later. So city savings are now at about 0.5% over the 25-year term. So this is very much a resilience program that's been communicated to city staff and board members. And there is significant downside risk in the form of tariffs and missing the NEM2 deadline and ITC risk that we will discuss, but we are working to mitigate some of those risks. So we're working really hard to execute this contract by the end of this month, the EPC contract, and then working with the cities to bring their power purchase agreements and get them approved by their respective city councils by July, so that we can progress this project and get these systems installed before April of 2026. So the board authorizations that we are bringing in this meeting are, one, to negotiate and execute the EPC agreement with McMillan Electric, to negotiate and execute PPAs with the 4 respective cities, and then allocate $8 million from local development funding for this program, which covers our upfront capital costs, our upfront risks that could hit early in the project development cycle, and then also covers us for some of the long-term downside risk as well. So that's the summary, and I'll be moving through some of these slides fairly quickly and others so we can leave time for the meaty ones. Next slide, please. So we had been, as you may recall, working to sign a power purchase agreement with a third-party owner-operator. That party withdrew at the early part of the year when a lot of the tariffs and ITC risk really started to raise up with the Trump administration, as well as the coming deadline of the NEM2 cliff in April of 2026. So within the last couple of months, we have pivoted to AVA taking ownership of the development process and taking long-term ownership of these solar and storage assets, and moving to an EPC contractor instead of a long-term asset owner. That also means we will be doing a lot of the kind of management of the designs, the permitting, the construction through the contract, as well as all the testing, commissioning, and interconnection. That's all what the EPC contractor will provide to us. And then we take ownership of those assets. And in doing so, we would also then be planning to capture investment tax credit, which is about 40% of the upfront cost of the systems, under the Inflation Reduction Act, which is one of the longer-term downside risks that we are getting our heads around. It also gives AVA really the opportunity to develop some experience in developing projects ourselves and owning those assets, which is not something historically AVA has done through most of our agreements. Certainly on the utility scale side, those are through third-party asset owners, and that's really how we have been planning to do this. Our tolling agreement with the DC fast charging operators that we do with our AVA Charge program, similarly owned and operated by another private sector asset owner. And so this is a shift to AVA owning assets, which is exciting for the organization and comes with a lot of learnings. Next slide, please. So we're going to enter long-term power purchase agreements where now AVA owns the asset. We sell the energy generation and the energy services in the form of the batteries that provides bill savings and backup power for the sites for when there's an emergency event or the grid goes down. And that's kind of the main structure of the power purchase agreement. We will own the assets, and then the cities will pay us for the performance. So we need to sign PPAs with cities come June, July, in order to keep this moving along. All our city councils have already authorized the city attorneys to sign these PPAs, but because the portfolio has reduced and the savings have changed, our cities want to take that back and make sure that they have the authorization to progress with this. But we've gotten very strong staff feedback and buy-in to the current portfolio of projects and savings. So we'll be delivering resilience. We'll be delivering an energy hedge to the rising PG&E costs that Member Lutz was talking about, that we're all facing as residents and our residents and businesses are facing. The solar and renewables goals certainly aligns with our city's self-generation and clean energy targets. I think the cities are certainly feeling like we are a counterparty who's really working to deliver this through thick and thin. And, you know, the AVA board is constructed of members from each of these cities, so they know there's going to be oversight and accountability for the long term. Next slide, please. So we quickly issued a solicitation, a public works solicitation to identify and select a contractor over the last couple of months. And we initiated that with an RFQ. We got 10 responses to the RFQ. We then had a follow-on round with 6 responses to that pricing round. So 6 of the 10 respondents actually gave us pricing. So then of the 6, we selected 3 finalists. They did site walks. And then that's after that, we narrowed the list to proposing to contract with Macmillan based on their price, their experience, and their level of competency in this space. So yeah, I think we can move to the next slide. That's our EPC evaluation criteria. I'm going to leave that and go to slide 7, Macmillan Electric. So Macmillan Electric is a local IBEW signatory contractor. They are located in San Francisco with IBEW 6. They're also a signatory of IBEW 595 here in Alameda County. They have a lot of experience in the electrical construction space as well as in solar. They are currently working with Peninsula Clean Energy, our CCA, to the southwest of us that serves the peninsula, and they've delivered several projects and are also make construction some other solar projects for Peninsula. So they came through as by far the strongest counterparty, not only in their contracting space, but also in how they've been a partner in negotiating the EPC contract, which is generally takes months, and we're really moving to execute that contract as quickly as we can because we need to get these projects moving, and so timeliness is of the essence. Next slide. So we do have strong labor commitments to you all and our member agencies, and Macmillan is stepping up to agree to those requirements. So we always require prevailing wage. In this case, we are also using union labor, and Macmillan is also working to source labor locally for at least 50% of the on-site construction hours, assuming that we can procure all that labor. And they are closely working with IBEW 595 in order to make sure that they've got everybody they need to do this work in a timely fashion. Next slide. So there are several parties in this agreement now, one less party than we had before. So AVA is now owning and operating the asset. We have Macmillan as the EPC contractor in the green box to the left. They are also able to provide an O&M agreement. We're working on a transitional O&M agreement that'll start with for a couple of years and have the option to extend. And we also have Lunar, who's our existing grid services platform that will give us visibility and some control over those batteries. And then we have the participating cities that will be signing PPA and paying AVA for the electricity provided and the battery energy services that are provided. So with AVA in the middle now, in the nice, bright, poppy orange box. All right, next slide, please. So the PPA pricing that we're providing now offers about a 0.5% savings over the 25-year term. So it's de minimis savings. It helps the cities will meet their cost neutrality targets, that they won't pay more for the provision of these services over the 25-year term, but it's fairly small. And that is based on the payments from the cities being less than the savings that they are receiving over the term. There's also the battery energy incentive that we'll be providing to cities as well. Next slide, please. So overall, there's 8 projects, so 2 projects per city. It's about 800 kilowatts. 500 kilowatts of PV, 1.3 megawatt hours of battery storage. Each of those projects will be getting the BESS incentive, the battery energy storage system incentive that we'll be rolling out for resilience hubs and the community later on this year. It's about $160,000 in incentive payments. So all these projects would be receiving a $2 per month per kilowatt hour payment for the battery system. There is one project that will be NEM 3. One of the projects in Berkeley has a 20-year-old PV system, so it's already reached its 20-year grandfathering term. And once you've reached the 20-year grandfathering term in NEM 2, you can't extend it even if you add a new system. So there will be one project that is NEM 2. And so that project would receive a higher upfront incentive. And that'll be passed through to the cities in the form of a bill credit for the 5-year term of the BESS incentive. Next slide, please. So here's a bit more of a meaty slide. So I'll go over each box. So the top left box is the CapEx scenarios. So the right side of that box shows kind of the net CapEx after ITC proceeds. So the $5.4 million is the expected capital outlay of AVA to develop all of these projects. And once we get the expected 40% ITC, that $2.1 million, then the net CapEx for AVA that AVA would be paying, we'll get that about a year and a half or so after we construct these projects. We would have $3.3 million of capital outlay to develop all these projects. Now, ITC is a risk. We have seen the first markup out of the Federal Ways and Means Committee. It does look like, at least in the current drafting, that there would be time. They are starting to phase out the investment tax credit in 2029. However, there are rules related to where you're sourcing products from that would mean that most of the products sourced from China, which is where a lot of the batteries and inverters and modules are coming from, would actually start to be phased out in August of 26, I believe, because of I forget what it's called, FIOC, yes. So we need to get these projects installed, and we'll see what happens with the ITC as the budget goes through its process. So the $5.4 million is kind of the expected capital outlay. So with that, then the next box down is the cash flow scenarios. So we have nominal cash flows to AVA of $2.5 million if we get the ITC. So that means over the 25-year term, AVA would realize $2.5 million of net cash flow. If we discount that, like the net present value of that is de minimis. It's negative $300,000. So if we present value those dollars, this is basically a break-even scenario if you're thinking about a 6% discount rate. So those are the main dollars out. And then there is the AVA risk bucket. So the table to the right is the AVA risk. So the top 3 risks are risks that we're really working hard to mitigate. So that's missing the NEM 2 deadline. If we miss that, that's about $1.4 million in lost savings. That would come through in the form of lower PPA payments because we'd have to adjust the city PPA rate so they could still have their 0.5% discount. There's also tariff risk, and tariffs have settled a little bit, and the pricing that we have is based on kind of the current tariff rate, but we know that there's volatility there. And then potential increased CapEx costs. All 3 of those were really working through how we can mitigate that. We've got McMillan has agreed to liquidated damages for missing the NEM 2 deadline, so that puts significant risk on them to really push the schedule and make sure to meet these project deadlines. We're also looking at how we can expedite and potentially kind of do some early procurement on equipment that may be subject to tariffs to mitigate that risk. Right now, there is sufficient equipment on shore for most of the categories of equipment, but that's a changing landscape, as we know. So we're working with McMillan and their distribution to kind of figure out how we can make sure that we don't face higher tariffs on the equipment that we buy. And then the increased EPC CapEx costs. We have done site walks and done a very detailed design review on every single one of the projects. So we're really getting our heads around what those costs would be, and we feel like we've mitigated those fairly well. The orange bucket of the repeal of the investment tax credit, that's a downside risk that we do not have the ability to control, and nor will we have much more insight into it by the time we probably have to commence construction on these projects. So that's an unknown. Again, the early drafting of the Ways and Means Committee, budget has come out, and so under that provision, we would be able to retain ITC. There is an elimination of transferability, but direct pay was not eliminated in the current budget bill. So at least as of today, we should expect to get that, all things considering, but it's still significant downside risk there. So, long and the short of it is we spend $5.4 million. There is risk to AVA. It doesn't mean that we are out more than essentially the $8 million we're requesting. The $8 million gives us enough to purchase and install all the systems, enough to cover our early cash out downside risks, and then over time we would still recover more funding than we had paid out in most of these scenarios. So this is kind of the cost of doing business in an uncertain environment, and we're really working to deliver these solutions for our cities. So I think that's the next steps and timing. So if we go 2 slides down, Adrian. Actually, sorry, 1 slide down. Yeah, that one. So we are recommending to work with Macmillan. They are providing kind of standard commercial roof warranties and warranties on the assets. The equipment also comes with longer term warranties. The modules are warranted for 25 years. The BESS are warranted for 10, and standard inverter warranties of 5 years. We're also reserving in our kind of cash flow model significant amount for operating expenses. So about $3.7 million is reserved for operating expenses, which includes maintenance, asset management, equipment replacement, which will happen on the inverters and batteries over the terms of the agreement, and all the insurance and decommissioning costs that we would expect as well. And we are looking at an O&M and performance guarantee offering that Macmillan has provided. So we'll plan to get that going at least initially with a 2-year plan, and then look to contract for that longer term over the term of the agreement. So next steps, right now we'll be working to execute the EPC agreement by the end of this month. And as soon as we execute on that, then we would provide a limited notice to proceed, and Macmillan would initiate designs, and we could authorize some of the pre-ordering of the equipment to mitigate tariff risk. That does put some gap risk in that we have to evaluate, which is we would be getting Macmillan started prior to the cities authorizing the PPAs in the June-July timeframe. It takes them generally 4 to 6 weeks to get stuff on an agenda and move it through their process. So there's a little bit of sequencing here. So that's why we've been working really hard with city staff to make sure that there's alignment here. And obviously everything has to go to the city council, just like has to go to our board, and the city council have the final say. But so far we're in pretty good shape, at least with the 4 remaining cities. So then the cities would execute the PPAs in the June-July timeframe. And then kind of June through December, we'll be doing the permitting, procurement, construction, and then getting to mechanical completion and the final electrical clearance in the first quarter of 2025. We don't have to get the systems fully operational. They don't have to receive a permission to operate in order to secure NEM 2.0. We just need to get the city final electrical inspection. So the electrical clearance is really the key date for securing that NEM 2 tariff in this window. So the kind of final commissioning and PTO can actually take a little bit longer after that timeline. But we have kind of LDs and milestone payments that are going to continue to push the contractor to get the job done, because only once it's done is when we start to receive the PPA payments from the cities. So last slide. So we recommend moving forward with building 8 of these critical municipal facilities projects. There's significant uncertainty with tariffs and tax incentives and a very tight schedule, but we're working to mitigate that risk. We think that the total expenditures is pretty contained at $5 to $8 million and delivers valuable resilience for our cities. So we're going to be asking the board to give Howard the authorization to negotiate and execute a couple contracts, and then we've got requests for $8 million of a previously approved local development budget for the delivery of this project. And over time, as we recover those funds, then we would put those dollars into other programs. So that would kind of continue on once we get this across the line, if we can get it across the line. So happy to discuss further.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, JP. I'd like to move to comments in the room, and I believe Cynthia has a question.
Yes, this was an excellent presentation, I want to say, and you really, looked at the financials and the risk and all that. I thought this was excellent. I wanted to ask you, your last sentence or two, you said, we recover, get some monies back, where are those monies going to be placed?
They would be placed back into the local development fund within the AVA local development fund. So each of our programs has like an accounting line. So there's a CMF line. So there's this $8 million would go into the CMF budget. It's an account code. And then it would go out the door to pay the contractor. And then as we start billing the cities for the energy services, we'll bring dollars back into that account. And that will fund the ongoing operations and maintenance of the assets, and also then accrue funds over time. So in the best case scenario, at the end of 25 years, there's $2.5 million plus whatever we've spent that sits in that fund, and we can fund other initiatives.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to, Peter.
I too would like to echo, I think this was an incredibly great report. You answered all the questions that the first time, I think you presented on this issue once before.
More than once, but yes.
In an earlier phase. And at that point, there were still some questions. I think you've really looked at the risks and looked at the advantages. And if this is an action item, I would like to move that we support.
Well, I'd like to actually, thank you so much, JP. I really think this is a step in the right direction. We're doing these ad hocs, and we're learning a lot about AVA and its history. And one of the things is that we would really like to own some of this stuff that we're paying for. And this is just hopefully the first of many, and we'd like to encourage that. And we have another comment. Thank you, Jim. And then.
I have another risk. Well, I want to echo everybody's appreciation of this. It seems like a great recovery, and it was a great project before, but I think it actually looks even better after what you've done. A risk that you didn't mention was PG&E delaying its interconnections.
Yeah, so there's two parts of that. The NEM2 deadlines are not based on PG&E's interconnection. That's a PG&E process for PTO, for permission to operate.
Sure.
But all we need for NEM 2.0 is the city inspections, the city electrical inspection sign off. There's also a couple projects that will need front of the meter upgrades from PG&E in order to kind of bolster the system to kind of take that. But similarly, we are in weekly meetings with PG&E, through the interconnection process, as well as talking with McMillan about it. And neither PG&E nor Macmillan see that those front of the meter upgrades would preclude the city from inspecting and providing the final electrical clearance. PG&E also has said if their delays cause a delay, then you get an extension. They're not going to give a writ large and mass extension for everybody, but if you're approaching the deadline and their delays for some reason are causing you not to be able to get your system installed, then you can petition them. But we're not relying on that right now. It's all about the the April 15th deadline.
Okay. But the actual start of operations could get delayed,
Yes, but that won't impact NEM 2.0.
but it may impact the city's and Ava's benefits from having the systems operating.
Yes, there is, but we have no lever on PG&E contractually. We have a leverage on the installer, and we have damages around delays
Right.
For them and milestone payments, so they don't get paid until it's all done. But yeah, we don't have
Right.
leverage on PG&E
Right.
to make them go faster.
And then, are there benefits to Ava from having access or control over that battery energy storage? I'm thinking, it's not a large amount, but, resource adequacy, load flex. Did you count any of those benefits into?
Could you speak
This-
into the microphone?
Did you count any of those benefits into this analysis?
We have not, and it's we do have our battery energy storage program and have been evaluating kind of what are the benefits there. In this case, we have the grid services rights within the contract, and it's a small amount of battery storage. 1.3 megawatt hours. You dispatch that over a 4-hour window. It's a few hundred kilowatts per hour. So it is, and we can kind of smooth that with NEM 2, we can smooth that out over a 4-hour window, and the cities are agnostic to that, right? Like they don't see the difference from a TOU arbitrage and a bill savings perspective, but it presents a more predictable load that we can model and get some benefit from. It's not a huge amount of benefit, so we haven't modeled that in here. But it's certainly something that we're going to look to optimize. And that's why we have the Lunar kind of grid services box in the transaction diagram as a reference to that control and visibility.
So, a slight,
Microphone. Yeah.
there's a slight chance of a slight amount of more benefit than you've included in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, great. Would you like to go in, Indira?
I'm good.
You're good? Yeah. Oh, Cynthia.
Yeah, we need a second to Member Weiner's motion, and I would like to make the second.
Oh, did we have a?
Public comment.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Also,
Thank you. I'd like to,
Okay.
is everybody finished in the room or online? Okay, any public comment? Yeah, we had a thumbs up from the public.
I'm good.
There are no members of the public with hands raised.
Okay, I'd like to go for a vote,
Or further
or
discussion.
are there any motions for a vote?
There is a motion.
Thank you for your hard work, JP.
If it
You
is
and your
timely
team.
now, I move we approve.
Thank you very much.
and I will second Member Landry.
Sorry, I missed that.
Okay. Ready for vote? Member Landry,
Yes.
Member Weiner,
Yes.
Member Balkison,
Yes.
Member Stevenson,
Yes.
Member Lockman,
Yes.
Member Harper,
Yes.
Member Lutz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Souza.
Yes, a resounding yes, thank you.
Motion's approved.
You forgot me. I'm
Oh,
also yes.
Member DeFranco.
Oh,
My apologies. Thank you. Motion's approved.
great. Well, thank you so much, JP. And now, what we've all been waiting for. We have, the next item on our agenda is the Energy Affordability Ad Hoc. I'd like to present to you Indira.
I want you to know this is a team, this is a committee effort. How's that? So I have sort of different pieces of paper. I just want to say this was a really incredibly great group of people to get to know, and the conversations were amazing. And thank you to Mickey and Jim and Peter and Davis, who were all part of this. So we, if you can just go to the next slide. We just thought that we should open with sort of the mess that we think we've been dealing with when we look at our bills. I just wanted to point out the WTF you gonna do fee and another dollar won't hurt fee. Just wanted to add a little humor because it's a pretty dry topic. You can go to the next slide. So the purpose of our committee is we just really wanted to figure out what AVA could do, what levers AVA could pull to make energy more affordable for its customers, and also to familiarize all of us with the issues, which we found to be quite challenging. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary of just sort of the conversations we had. We had a number of conversations about rate increases, why do they keep increasing? What are AVA's rates versus PG&E rates? We talked about, whether or not the costs are being shared, who should be paying for things like wildfire protection. We talked about what's consumer protection, transparency in terms of the rates we're seeing, when we get our bills. We don't have the specifics about distribution and transmission. And then what I think is most poignant from our conversation was what is AVA's risk? Because we feel like with the rates rising that there is a big risk to AVA in terms of people coming to us to have, renewable energy, but also affordable renewable energy. And I also think people trust AVA and they're hoping that AVA will defend them. So we talked a lot about that. And then, of course, we talked about investor-owned utilities and the business model, which I think came up a little bit in the legislation discussions. And then we have some recommendations and actions. And so that's just sort of a nutshell of what we've looked at. This next slide here really shows about the rate increases. And this is not new to anybody. 127% is a big number since 2014. And you can just sort of see the trends, and everybody knows it. So I don't think this is anything new. And then the next slide. And you guys, if you want to add anything, please do. So we sort of thought, what are the explanations for this? And Peter raised this about the wildfire mitigation, and we do know that the way the system is set up, that PG&E is spending a lot of money on building transmission lines and undergrounding. And so that was one of our questions. And then you can see here investments in infrastructure, who pays for the additional transmission and distribution lines, and that has to do with sort of planning and development with towns. Is inflation the reason? Is Diablo Canyon the reason? Is PG&E, what are their profits? Are they too high? And then the next slide. You can see here, talking about the wildfire, this chart shows, each event that we've had happen. The 2001 bankruptcy, we had PG&E bankrupt in 2001, and then the San Bruno in 2010. And then you can see the Tubbs fire in Sonoma and Napa in 2017, and then 2019. And then we're still going up. So, and you can see there's two lines here. There's what did the tiered one? Is the TOU, is that what that was? The tiered?
The time of use.
Time of use, and then we went time of use to tiered, or tiered to time of use. And that even went up higher. So this is just sort of we have the data to show that. And then the next one we were looking at, PG and AVA rates. And so this gets really into the business model, really, because we know, I'm not telling you all what AVA provides. You know that AVA does the generation and PG&E the transmission and distribution. And the AVA rates are supposed to be 5% less. But the risk to AVA is because we're supposed to be lower. And we heard that statement that, 5% of people don't hook up to AVA because they're concerned about the rates. That was a statement that was in one of the conversations. Am I remember that correct, Jim?
Opt-out. Right.
Yeah, the opt-out rate. And we know that AVA is a joint powers authority, and which I think of as a nonprofit. Maybe it's not really, it's more state, but, and then PG&E being a for-profit. So we talked a lot about that, and we're trying to figure out, kind of, I guess, we want PG&E to become a nonprofit too, just as the commenter made. And then the next slide is just talking about ratepayers. What should be shared? We spent a lot of time talking about what should actually be shared. And Peter mentioned it about the wildfires, and he asked about the legislation. We spent some time talking about that. Like, if this is actually, wildfires are something that maybe the state should take over, or the tax should be paid for by taxpayers, not necessarily ratepayers, because it's a climate change problem and it's a problem everywhere in the state. So maybe that's just a bigger issue. And then the next slide we looked at consumer protection. And are perhaps overly negative, but we really feel like PUC is more aligned with the investor-owned utilities than it is with the public. And they're supposed to be regulating us and protecting consumers. That's actually from the advocate site, the PUC site. And we're not sure why does it appear like PG&E is they're paying for grid lawsuits, grid improvements, and upgrades. Like,
Yeah, I'd like to chime in.
please chime in.
Yeah, in the model of PG&E, there's this space, this percentage of profit that PG&E is allowed, which means that the more they spend, that percentage allows for a greater profit in dollars. And we feel that they're incented to
Raise rates on us.
well, have more cost,
Yes.
build more,
Right.
and build more peaker plants, and keep Diablo Canyon running, and so what we're worried about is that PG&E is actually leveraging that margin that they're using to pay themselves, put more money into their pocket. So we're just really worried about how PG&E is unfairly raising rates. I think there was just in the paper another rate request.
But it's only one digit this time, not
Only
double
one digit.
digits.
It's not supposed to raise rates, although we have seen, are you going to go into the, I'm sorry.
The next one, the next slide.
Okay,
You're
we'll
on the
go
next
into
slide.
that. But I just wanted to emphasize that we're really, really worried, not just for the consumers, the community, but we're also worried about what's going on with how AVA itself is being looked at. Apparently, there's been one of the CCAs has already gone bankrupt,
Oh, really?
is the last word that
I didn't
I've
know
heard. I'm going to have to look that up. I don't have anything to cite that, but I do believe that there's a concerted effort through the IOUs to make better, that the CCAs were supposed to have protected the consumer rather than protect the consumer. They have worked around their ways into making more money.
And I actually have a quote of Mickey that says, "AVA should be very concerned about escalating rates because people look at numbers, not reasons. It's making the introduction of CCAs look bad because customers are not seeing savings. And AVA is supposed to be the solution, and that's not happening."
And I just like to, as long as we're chiming in now.
Yeah. Please chime in.
One of the, ironically, the PUC, in trying to keep rates down, was very aware that PG&E or SCE made money when they spent money. And so for many years, what they really tried to do was stop them from building new transmission lines. Well, we now need new transmission lines to access renewable energy. But there should be, nationally, there's a rule that transmission procurement should be competitive. And in the state, we don't do that. We just allow the utilities to do it and make their 10%. But nationally, FERC says there should be competition. So the 10 West line that's coming into California from Arizona, for example, was a competitive process rather than SCE simply doing it. But on the fire prevention side, that's 10% on top of that. And the fire prevention issue is a combination of PG&E or SCE or SDG&E having lousy old lines that they didn't do much with, plus the land use decisions of community after community to allow development at the urban wildfire fringe. And so these are local land use decisions just as much as they are utility faults. And we see this in Altadena, we see this in Pacific Palisades, frankly. So to say that this should be a ratepayer cost and that PG&E should then get 10% on top of everything else for doing something to stop wildfires is really the definition of crazy. And it's crazy for California to support the PG&E shareholders getting a 10% profit on protecting us from fire that's a societal issue. So that's one of the reasons that those rates on that chart are going so up so high. We need to socialize this as a California society, not allowing, frankly, our elected representatives to hide and say, oh, we'll just let this be a ratepayer issue instead of addressing it through the budget.
Thank you.
That's really well said.
Yes, and I think we also did an analysis with a 2015 bill. And
Yes, we
just
did.
as how rates go, we just took one bill. It's just one scenario, so it's not
I didn't put that in here.
the best representation, but it was equal. The distribution and transmission charges were equal to the generation charges back in 2015. And today, they're double and triple the generation charges. So what does that do? It casts,
We get to that slide too.
right, oh, pardon me.
So in terms of consumer protection, that's the summary, sort of that, and you heard a really good summary. The next thing we evaluated was the lack of, the next slide, please. The lack of transparency about the specifics, and that's kind of, this is, which you guys already said, is adding to that. And then, so the next slide is leading into exactly what Mickey was saying. So you can see here, these are the bills, what people are specifically paying for, but you can see the transmission and distribution are increasing. But you don't see wildfire and grid infrastructure and demand. Those costs, we didn't find them being available. So there's a lack of transparency in terms of understanding that. Did you, Mickey, wanted to say, we don't know where the wildfire infrastructure is located. Is it separated on the bill in the rollout of PG&E? All we pay is AVA, all we pay for AVA is generation, but what's AVA paying for the overall electricity? AVA is 40% of the bill on the generation side. Why is the PC1 REX increasing over the last few years? And how many megawatt hours is AVA buying, and how much is AVA paying? Has PG&E costs been audited and justified by people who know about wildfire mitigation and transmission line maintenance? So we just don't have that data. We tried to look for it. We still have air sealing on there, Mickey.
Oh, we do, yes.
But these are just some of the many questions we had, and we don't really know where we can go to find that information about how, in terms of transparency. And then the next slide gets at another issue that we looked at. The JPA states that one of AVA's missions is to provide electricity rates lower than PG&E, and AVA should be protecting its customers from rising costs from PG&E side. And on the next slide, it gets at the risks, we thought. These increasing bills, they just look bad, and they impact the way people view the renewable industry. And it's unclear, we aren't sure that AVA actually knows what the components are for PG&E, or if there's a mechanism for AVA to find that out from PG&E. We don't know. And I think people, when they join our group together, thought that when people become customers of AVA, they're going to save money. And because we're a joint powers authority, AVA's vulnerable, I think, if we're not reducing our customer rates as well. Because someday after people get mad at PG&E, you'll get mad at us. You guys want to say anything about that? Does that, okay. And so on the next slide, so these are sort of where we're going with this is we just think we need a new business model. And that it was interesting that the caller, the commenter was really commenting on this. We talk a lot about solar, but we're not really talking about the overall electricity. And our city's paying their fair share. And what Peter just said about the societal costs. And what about the burdens of the taxpayer in the states? Is it negligent? We're not sure. And there's really seems to be a failure for the regulators to check on the IOU spending due to lack of transparency, due to just not even writing articles about it to say we understand it's really expensive. And then the last thing, we just came up with some recommendations and actions. So we thought that AVA, we're not sure how exactly, but AVA should protect customer rates, should talk about it, should be sympathetic, should say a plan for what we're doing to address that. We should push for fire risk costs to be paid for by taxpayers or state budget or IOU shareholders. I'm not sure if that's something we can do in our legislative side to push for that. And the IOUs spending should be frozen until there's a plan to manage costs, because right now it's just out of control. And of course, increasing transparency and having a detailed accounting of expenses and planning on somebody representing the ratepayers. And there doesn't appear to have been an independent analysis of PG&E spending by an outside party, somebody unbiased. And increasing the benefit with NEMS. A lot of the stuff we heard was from Richard McCann about solar, and sort of feel like the NEMS conversation is completely wrong. And there was an article, I think it was in the New York Times, wasn't it, about cost shift. They talk a lot about cost shift, but when you just look at the power lines, you can see that the solar people are feeding their neighbors their electrons. It's not going back into the grid. PG&E is not getting any benefit out of it. People just aren't buying as much electricity from PG&E. So it's kind of a public good in a way, but people who are doing solar are kind of treated like they're the bad guy. So we feel like that's just something there should be more of a conversation about. I'm not sure why that's not happening. I guess Richard McCann is doing it. And then the last one is just actions. So we thought, could we develop a list of energy affordability legislation? We kind of did a little bit today, but is there any that we could push, that's more forceful? Would AVA be willing to do that? And then we think it'd be great to hear Dr. Richard McCann, who's really an outspoken solar economist, to really come and talk to us about what he sees as his perspectives about the IOU business models, because he had a lot of ideas on that. And then I think AVA should, all of us, the committee, feels that AVA should evaluate the risks of uncontrolled rates. And we haven't heard that discussion about what is the risk to AVA if PG&E just can't control itself. And then increase some transparency of AVA's detailed accounting of expenses and spending and planning on behalf of the ratepayers. And then the biggest one, I think, is for AVA to join like the NRDC and some of these big coalitions that are fighting for, energy affordability, and really try to protect. Because I think we should be more active. We shouldn't just say, oh, we're 5% cheaper than PG&E. That's nothing. Just doesn't help. So
PG&E's going up 25%
Yeah.
in the last 3 years.
right, and then as
Doesn't feel like a savings.
it's not savings. And I just wanted to add this other piece that I got on Friday in the mail from PG&E. Did you guys see this on Friday? They said that it was talking about stabilizing our energy bills. And they said they expect our energy bills to decrease in 2026. And on May 15th, PG&E submitted a cost proposal for 2027 to 2030 cost. It's their smallest increase in a decade due to the $2.5 billion saved in operating capital costs over the past 3 years. And it's expected that residential bills in 2027 will be the same as 2025. And they're saying that they reinvest 97% of profits back into their business. And there was a whole list of all the different things that they're doing. I just thought I should have made a slide, but just got it on Friday, so. But I just thought that was really interesting because we've experienced that as a committee. Every time we would get together, there'd be some new thing we'd see about what are we doing to save our rates? And so I don't really know what this means, but one digit versus
97%?
Yeah, 90
They spend 97%, that's a.
they reinvest 97% of their profits back into their business.
How
That's
can
what they
do
said.
that?
I don't know.
That's what you take out of a business.
I will
That's the
send this to you.
No, I don't,
I know.
I'll get it in the next month.
But they said their typical residential combined bills have stabilized since 2024, and we expect them to go down in 2026. A 98% reduction in wildfire risk in areas where we've moved power lines underground. A 600% increase in pole and tower inspections using drones and advanced imaging. 40% increase in new customers' connections to the grid in 2024 compared to 2023 at a lower cost. And they
It
just
sounds a
go
little
on.
cherry-picked, but
Yeah, just
Oh.
goes on and on and on, but, so,
their profit is 10%. It's gone up between 8 to 10 to 11%, I believe,
Yeah.
in the past
Yeah.
10 years. And it's pretty consistent. But I think, what your point is that they can say anything they want about reinvesting. All I know is that if I have a home and I'm paying my PG&E bill because I'm paying for whatever I'm using, which would be, in essence, generation costs. I'm paying for my wattage. And I decided I wanted to redo all my copper piping, and I wanted to add a kitchen. And then I said that, well, somebody else should pay for that. I think that as a business, I think that's what we're seeing. That's why we're seeing out of control costs, is we don't have the transparency to the consumer does not have the look into their actual finances because there's a lack of transparency. And second, they're allowed. They have a free rein, and they act as if they have free rein
Right.
through the CPUC.
and I think they do.
It's self-evident.
Yeah. But so it wasn't clear, we couldn't determine specifically what levers we think AVA has, other than the legislative part, and really, almost a marketing campaign, really, in terms of how much, what's AVA's plan to help with reduce rates. I mean, I don't,
Well, one of you said, somebody said that you had somebody in Ava's staff had gone through, and
yeah, Sam said that,
you said that.
yeah. On the increases, on the rate increases, right?
Yes, the regulatory team here has gone through that and put together a presentation. We had hoped to bring it to you this month, but we'll work to get on the schedule in a subsequent meeting.
Would it make sense to meet with the ad hoc committee first, and we could grill you on it?
I wasn't the one who wrote it, but I can
Well,
I
you
can
know,
pass along the
We meet
request.
once a month.
Yeah.
So, just to make it,
Well.
get the clarity with it, and the sort of questions we're asking.
Okay, Cynthia.
Yes, this presentation, first of all, is excellent, and I thank the ad hoc committee. And I would like to see, by the way, I don't know if it's possible to have the consultant.
Oh, Richard McCann.
Yes.
Yeah, Jim
Yeah. it
sent
would
his
be-
information.
It would be great to have the consultant, because I think even with your, the ad hoc presentation, we need to get into the mechanics a little bit more about, the various charges. But I'd also like to add this, that apparently, some parts of our electric grid, needs a lot of extensive work. And, it does appear remember, I'm a social worker now. But it does appear that the undergrounding is, helping to mitigate perhaps some of the fires. This state is gonna go into, it's gonna apparently be drier and is gonna feel the effects more and more on the climate change. It's a very complicated, we have very complicated expenses in the future. And, it reminds me of a public policy discussion about who should be paying those costs. I do agree, it just can't be the ratepayer, and the cost needs to be, spread out. So, costs need to be spread out. But I think there should be some discussion or some potential legislation or some working with a state senator or assembly person regarding this, maybe future
I agree with you, yeah.
next year, and I just want to say this last thing. Renewable energy, regrettably, as I understand it, is not as cheap as it once was. And while I think that decarbonization is very important, clearly it's very important, I would like to see renewable green energy. And in my mind, that's wind, solar, those energies, as opposed to carbon neutral. And that does apparently, that's going to cost more and more money, I guess, in the future.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a question that just came up. Friday, I went and heard Catherine Cahoe. She's a very famous climate person, and she said that this administration doesn't allow us to use the word climate change or climate stuff, but she had this whole list of every single thing from droughts to, agriculture changes to, everything. It's all climate related. So I actually think this affordability discussion really ties into climate stuff as well, which is what you're saying. I'm agreeing 100%. And so we are a little remiss if we don't somehow keep talking about it's going to get worse. We need to prepare for this. What, people cannot, how much more can we pay to do the right thing, for renewables? And so it probably is a legislative issue. And we probably should, maybe that's what we should do, is meet with some of our legislators and see. I don't know if the CAC can do that. Or...
Yeah, I'd like, go ahead, Peter.
Peter there? I didn't see.
Yes,
Sorry.
just a couple of things. One, you mentioned that some of the undergrounding may help. It may, but what I've read about is that some of the undergrounding they're doing doesn't help. When they underground distribution lines in our neighborhoods, it's prettier, the aesthetics are better, but I'm told that really doesn't have anything to do with fire risk. The fire risk is the larger transmission lines, because they're in areas where the flames aren't caught for a while, because they're in very rural areas. When it happens near your home, I'm told it's reported within a couple of minutes, and it's really not a big danger in terms of wildfire. Now, I don't know that. It seems to me logically it should decrease risk to do it as well. But it seems to me that we need somebody neutral to figure out the best bang for our buck in reducing fire risk. And I'm not sure that's people who get a 10% profit from deciding what it is. Just thinking about it. And so anyway, I think a lot of different things have been going up in price. And part of that has to do with national policy. If you have tariffs and you can't use foreign-made items, which may be a good thing, things are going to go up, and we're all paying for it. But I think we still are committed to, I think Ava is committed to renewables, and we all are. So anyway.
I'd also like to mention that one thing that I have been remiss on, and this is my forte, is energy efficiency. And we at AVA should, if in the near future, develop, I think there was a organization called Block Power, and I don't think Block Power is in, I don't know if you remember them. They were for energy efficiency, and I don't think they're around anymore. But we should look at helping our community and individual ratepayers by helping them move towards energy efficiency and less use,
Right.
which would directly impact climate change. And I do proudly say that, climate change.
Yeah, we do say that.
And I think that we need to add that to our list.
Yeah, I agree. I just, do you think, does AVA have any energy efficiency programs?
Well, I think it was
That was just
JP
JP.
ran off. There was a program called Block Power.
That's
and-
Block-
And they would, do you remember anything about that?
Oh, well,
Thank
I wasn't actually going to talk about Block Power, but we have an energy efficiency program that I don't think is currently accepting applicants, but it was a commercial, I think with CPUC funding to help kind of energy efficiency for large scale users. But that's Building Accelerator.
Building
There we
Accelerator.
go. Yeah, it even has a great name. But I don't think that one's actively taking additional sites at this moment.
Yeah, and that's what probably we'll request of AVA in the future, because that is an excellent way to reduce rates and improve or reduce our use of energy and therefore climate change.
So if I just kind of reiterate the list of the action items, adding energy efficiency to this list, and then also adding to the list the bills that we talked about today, but also adding, can AVA bring these things up to the legislators when they're lobbying them about energy affordability and climate related? And the thing Peter keeps saying is, can't all the state pay for wildfires? Can we, that's not in any of the bills, right now? That the transfer,
I-
transfer of,
Were you going to answer that?
So there are some elements of some bills about wildfire, paying for wildfire. I think part of that is the commitment to
The
CAL
G-
FIRE, the GGRF funding
GGRF.
for CAL FIRE more broadly. But
can we specifically ask about that? The GGRF, can it look at that issue? Is it something that AVA could, like when you're talking to the legislative people, is that a question you could ask them, or?
Well, it's under negotiation right now, so
Okay.
we shall see. But this would be a shift, increased money to CAL FIRE out of state funds, not out of ratepayer funds, under the proposed budget from the Newsom administration.
Well, that's good. That would still give relief to ratepayers if it's coming out of the state budget, so that's good.
I don't think this would directly give relief to ratepayers, but this would be supporting something that could theoretically be a charge to ratepayers.
I think there were actually maybe one or two of those action items that AVA was monitoring that talks about less transparency or more information based on the rate increases.
Some of those.
And wildfires were mentioned.
Right, and they were mentioned.
Can't remember
Yeah, the
exactly which ones.
GGFR, like Sam was saying.
And as the ad hoc committee, I think we are both committed to reducing AVA's risk that we are perceiving, and would like to work with you
Yeah.
in any way we can. We would like to offer our hand in help. If it means that we have to do some research, we're willing to do it.
Yeah.
We get double the pay, right? We get
Double.
the pay, zero.
Zero times zeros.
Yeah, times zero, right? So we are happy to offer our services in that regard.
And Mickey, I just want to build on that and say that this presentation and our conversation is not meant to attack AVA in any way. This is all meant to, we hope, identify risks to AVA and to support AVA in that way. So I just want to point that out.
Are you is this gonna be on the board agenda for Wednesday? Or how does the board get this?
No, it won't be on the board agenda, but the CAC chair, who's a non-voting member on the board, can provide an update on what the CAC discussed and any kind of takeaways or recommendations that the CAC wants to provide to the board. But that will be the extent of it at this month.
And this is our first presentation from the Energy Affordability Ad Hoc, and we really would like some comments and areas of improvement that we could, in ways that we can help. So either contact us through email, or you can make comments right now. And at this point, are there any comments in the room?
I do have a comment. So PG&E will gladly accept any state funding to take care of the Cal or any fire happening. And the irony is that fund they save will never either reach
Never
to
materialize for us.
customers or the public. That's again my observation from the last 20 years or so. While this makes sense from our point of view, but when it if it gets implemented, when it gets implemented, how do we ensure that there is some accountability on PG&E to show the budget they have allocated and used historically, and what they have planning to release it to some body? I don't know.
Some of the legislation in there, the 332, and I think there were some other ones that were asking for transparency and audits of what they actually spent, and make sure that they spent it, it's done well, so.
Yeah, I think those are super important, because I think that if we don't stop PG&E, the more money they make and the more profit they make, they will be reinvesting it, but it won't be for our benefit.
I would recommend that if possible, we connect you with the regulatory folks to inform this discussion, as they are really very, very deep into this. And maybe before you present a recommendation to the board, be sure that we can find time with you all to connect with our team.
That would be excellent.
To dig in a little further.
That would be great. One of the things I was going to say is that the danger of our forming this ad hoc committee was really that nobody would be there to listen. Because there are times when a committee, a group such as the Board of Directors, thinks of the CAC as an entity that's kind of publicly necessary, and we need them to validate what we do. But there's not necessarily an exchange. And staff has been wonderful to the CAC in terms of both listening to us and giving us presentations. But we're now reversing that a little bit, giving you a presentation and asking for your response. And so that's really important to us in terms of validating the time and energy that we're spending at the incredible rate of pay that we referenced earlier, is to actually get some response from you guys other than, oh, that's nice. So that'd be great to have.
And I really, so happy that Sam is here. I feel really good.
Yeah, me too.
I should know, I'm not the expert, so I'm not the person who would be best positioned to engage in a back and forth on PGE cost, but I know there are members of our team here.
Well, we're addressing all of you here who are here as staff as the experts at getting the experts to tell us.
I mean, I think in a way you can walk away with what our questions. You can walk away with what our questions are, and they actually are in this presentation. And I think that the actions is what we'd like to develop together. I think that's-
Well, to synthesize, do you have anything else to just crystallize this, other than our recommendations of transparency? And why don't you wrap it up?
Could I make a motion of something? Can you motion something that we meet with?
Only if it's
Or
on the agendas.
can we make requests that this be on the agenda, that what Sam was talking about, the costs?
For the ad hoc, or just for?
Well, in kind of,
report?
kind of building on what Peter was saying, as a response to what we've said in our recommendations and our actions, can we get a kind of a rebuttal or whatever dialogue that we could develop together, a plan, or develop a next steps together?
This is an informational item, so perhaps you just reach a consensus, or you just take feedback from the committee.
Well,
I think the best next step from what Sam was saying is we have a couple, the ad hoc affordability committee meet with a couple of the regulatory people.
Okay.
And we give them all our questions and let them answer, and then
Right.
maybe that'll change what we want to
Yeah.
do.
And I
Right,
think
and
he's
then-
already agreed to that. So
Yes, he
I
has.
think we need.
Yeah,
need further-
okay, and then as a result of that, we'll write up our recommendations for the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, I'm sure Sam can't, schedule them or anything, but we would request that.
Yeah.
And perhaps we can have a little bit of a talk afterwards.
So we can like come in.
Yeah, I would just say I can kind of try to help coordinate that, and we'll do our best to check in with those necessary staff members and see what we can do on that front for sure.
Excellent.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Katie.
That'd be great.
That's great. Katie was great at the wind farm too, by the way.
Yes, thank you.
Glad you liked it.
All right. Well, I would, any public comment or comment from online?
I can give a very brief update on the LDBP.
Oh, yes.
If we're done with the
Yes,
affordability
please.
ad hoc.
Okay, there's a second ad hoc here.
Yeah.
We're ad hocs all the way around.
We've been meeting regularly. It's settled on to the first Wednesday of the month. We've been conducting, one or two or three of us will have a listening session with stakeholders, and we plan to synthesize the information that we're gathering and prepare a public presentation to the CAC and then the board at some point. And at the rate it's going, it'll probably take several months. We've been reviewing, what we can find internal. We did have a question of the early LDPP documents, the draft work products, webinars and stuff. Is that still available? Because the LDBP itself is sort of apparently there were lots of interim reports and interim webinars and workshops and stuff, and is the material, and we have been having trouble finding that information. And I did a quick search on the AVA website and found the LDBP, found the JPA, but I didn't find like the report from the interim reports and the webinars and stuff that were like 2017, 2018.
Were these webinars that were part of board meetings, or were they separate from?
They were separate from board meetings. And they were up on the EBCE website. And I saw some of them, but that was years ago, so. And they may still be there, but I didn't keep the links and, it wasn't, the founding documents just gives the JPA and the LDVP. It doesn't give the working, what do they call them? Draft work products, the interim reports, the seminars. There were some public workshops that were really before AVE got up and running, but were part of the process of what should go into the LDPP.
So I remember, I was trying to remember her name. She gave a really wonderful presentation.
Anna Olivia Eldred. Oh, what's that?
Well, it wasn't Anna Olivia, it was a staff.
Oh,
Yeah, maybe she would know.
We can look into that. Yeah, I
Oh,
can look
perfect.
into that.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be great. And you, I think Jim knows more about it. If you have any questions,
Yeah.
he can synthesize that or, give you a little bit more way to figure it out, what these interim documents are.
and that's it. I mean,
And they were public, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
Very
there
good.
were
Okay.
lots and lots of comments on the preliminary reports, and those were public too.
This was prior to AVA's,
Well, it was,
I mean, EBCE's inauguration as an agency, or after?
well, it was when the county was developing the LDBP, because the county,
Are you talking about the steering committee? Is that what you're referring to?
yeah, but the
Yeah.
county was doing the official agency stuff because EBCE wasn't
Formed yet.
formed yet.
Yeah, so
But
that
there
was a
were
steering committee.
comments and stuff. And I remember looking for them 3 or 4 years ago for some reason. Found them on the EBCE website under like foundational documents or something. But when you go there now, it's just the JPA, you know, the various versions of the JPA and the LDBP, but not the public comments from public workshops and seminars and stuff.
Interesting.
I'll follow up with you.
Are there
But that's it.
any
Uh,
public comments? Nobody raising their hand?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, all right.
Jim, do you think you could contact Dr. McCann and see if he would like do a Zoom call with us? Because maybe
For
we
the
should,
affordability.
yeah, maybe we
I
should
can
do
try
that. Meet with the
We should probably
legislative,
meet with him.
yeah,
first.
with the legislate, yeah, ad hoc and legislation, then before we do the recommendations.
Okay,
That would help.
okay.
All right.
Sorry to circle back on you like that.
So I'd like to begin the close and looking for a request to place items on a future agenda
Well, at some point,
at some point. Okay.
the LDPP will have something, ad hoc will have something to say.
We might
but
just
not-
have some updates on the LDPPs, I mean, the Act of Hawks.
Yeah.
Just 5 minutes, maybe, or something.
Yeah, I mean, we have work to do now on the,
Yeah,
on
we
the
have work to
energy
do.
affordability.
All right. And any other items for the future agenda? Okay. Oh. All right. I also wanted to give a heads up that the resiliency hubs, they had a wonderful presentation. They gathered a lot of information from the public. They're doing a few of them, I think, so they're working very hard on synthesizing what a resiliency hub to the community should look like, and other formation items. Very good, and thank you. So
All
with
right.
that,
They have a few more of those, don't they, coming?
Oh, good, because I missed that one. I'm sorry I did.
Okay.
Can those be announced when they, you know, to the extent that various groups are permitted to go? Could those be announced a little bit earlier?
Yeah, I'll do my best. As
No,
as
I'm
soon as
not-
they're on my radar, I'll
I'm
send you
not-
that email.
I'm not, no, I'm,
yeah, there's one
course.
Wednesday.
yeah, well.
There we go. Yeah.
I've taken care of it, yes, but
So
thank you.
2 more days, and there will be
Yeah.
another one.
I've registered, yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, I'm going to bring this meeting to a close, and it is now 8:39, and the Community Advisory Committee meeting is now coming to a close.
Well done.
Well done. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.